Welcome to the Piece by Piece Autism Podcast with your hosts, Angie and Christy. They've worked 25 years to help Alec get the most out of life. Let them tell you how they're doing it.
Welcome back to Piece by Piece Autism Podcast. We are glad that you are here. At Piece by Piece, we discuss all things related to Alec, who is 28 years old, lives in Utah in a group home setting, and is Christy's youngest son. And today we've got a fun guest and kind of a, hopefully not too serious of a topic to discuss today as we branch out into advocating for children in a school setting. So, Christy, I will let you introduce today's guest.
Okay, Megan is one of our favorite people of all time, and she is a longtime friend of our dear Alec. And I do have to mention, she was his first teacher crush.
Yes, he was. He was.
Totally crushed on Megan. She's got the most beautiful crystal blue eyes. She's adorable, and we love her. Megan and Michael, you'll remember Officer Owen, who is now a detective, has been married 22 years. She's a mother to 4 kids, Anna, Blake, Max, and Spencer. And together as a family, they enjoy camping. They play lots of baseball and soccer. She graduated from TWU, that's Texas Women's University, with a degree in education, as she has 12 years of experience advocating for her own children as well as the children in her classroom. Special education has become a passion of hers, and she plans to go back to school to earn a master's degree next fall. You teach 4th grade, is that correct?
I teach 3rd grade.
Oh, I thought you taught 4th grade all this time.
That's okay.
I think Angie, before she was a retired teacher,
Yep.
she taught 4th
Yep,
grade,
she
I
sure
believe.
did. She sure
I
did.
did.
That's where I got it. That's where I got it. That's where I got it. Okay. Anyway, we're going to talk about a couple of things. I've had some really interesting conversations with Megan in the past about how she's advocated for her own children as far as getting accommodations. Is it called accommodations or accommodations, first off?
They're accommodations.
Accommodations.
Mhm.
Okay. I've heard people say that word, but I have not known how it actually is said. So first of all, we were going to dive in and talk about her advocating as a parent.
Yeah, I think Megan's perspective is really interesting and unique because she, again, has been a parent to kids with accommodations within the general education classroom setting, as well as being a teacher and seeing how that is actually applied from a teacher's perspective. And it's a lot to juggle. So we're starting first by discussing her experience as she's advocated as a parent. So what did you do with your kids? How did you know that they needed accommodations? Kind of give us some of the background there. What were the beginning signs?
Well, I think that it was really important from the get-go with both of my kids who have gone on to get, accommodations in the general education classroom. They started presenting as I could tell that they were not meeting standards or benchmarks that were common within the general education classroom. They were having a hard time reading or meeting comprehension goals, those kinds of things. And I was able to, communicate with their teachers, and we were able to, conference back and forth with each other. And they would say to me, we're watching this, we're monitoring this, we're creating goals for them because we are not, we're seeing that they are a little below grade level on this. And it was just a constant progression of, hey, we're going to monitor, we're going to look. They took data. They were really good at keeping me informed as to what it looked like in the classroom. And then from there, we were able to, go through and discuss in parent-teacher conference meetings, and they were able to discuss the data with me and say, look, we've tried X, Y, and Z in the classroom, and these things are not working. We think it is going to be time that we pursue different avenues because what we're doing in the classroom is not filling those gaps like we had hoped it would be. And so we think that the next step to get educational testing is the best for your child. And so I think for me, having that open and honest communication with my kids' teachers at all times knowing how they were progressing and really just having that open line of communication, that was really important for them and for me to keep on.
Were these things that you were seeing at home as well, or was it just more from performance and benchmarks through school?
I think I have a unique perspective because I see how parents can say, well, I'm not really seeing this in the classroom. And sometimes we go in denial about what we're noticing or and those kinds of things. And I think when you look at it and I could tell that, oh, we probably should be reading a little bit better than this, or you really don't fluently read. And I really tried this at home, but he's not catching on to this, phonics pattern. And I could tell that we were getting behind. And I knew for both of my kids, unfortunately, COVID played a huge role in their early educational years.
Yes.
And so some of those pivotal reading years were interrupted because of COVID. And so they weren't getting that early initial phonics learning and teaching from the get-go. And so we kept trying to do it, and we kept trying to do it, trying to, teach them these things. And at the end of the day, they were being explicitly taught in as a high of a intervention system as would allow in a general education setting, but they weren't able to retain them and transfer that knowledge into on their own. And so at that point, I knew, okay, I know that they're working hard, and I know that their teachers are working as hard as they can. Something must be going on.
Yeah.
And so it is a really hard thing to have that mindset of something is going on with my kid that I can't fix. And so that's something for my kids. It was even as an educator and seeing them regularly as a parent, it still is a very difficult thing to have that realization. Like, okay, we do need to get help.
How did you know what was available for your child? Once you found out, okay, we're not hitting benchmarks, we've got to do something. Did the teacher make you aware of there needing to be this next step? And then how do you become aware of what are my possibilities here? Where's the menu of what I can look at that might serve my child? And how am I going to pick that?
So in both instances with both of my children that have gone on to receive special education services, I did have parent-teacher conferences before, just to tell them or to tell me, listen, we have done everything that we can do and to offer in the general education setting to remediate some of these skills that we have not been able to master. And at this point, we've met with other professionals. We have presented all the data. Everything's very much data driven. And they would say that to me, here's all this data and we're trying all these things, and it's just we're not seeing the progress that we would like to see. And we would like to go ahead and test them to see if there's any type of learning disabilities. And for both of my children, that was given to me in that sense. I was told those things. Now, not necessarily in all general education settings does that always happen. In my case, it did happen that way, but you can always, as a parent, looking at what they bring home from school, working with them at home just a little bit, reading with them all the time, you should be able to really gain a greater understanding of where they're sitting and how they're doing in their education, essentially.
Is it appropriate for a parent to request testing on behalf of the school? And will the school willingly do that? Or is that something you have to kind of push for?
So a parent can, at any point in their children's education, always request testing. They can always 100% request testing, and schools have to honor that. There's a very specific way that you would go about doing that. But if you, at any point in any child's education, it happens all the time, where, sometimes in general education, our processes are not necessarily slow, but we have to try this, and then we're going to try this, and then we're going to try this, and then we're going to try this. And sometimes that process can be 6, 8, 9, 12 weeks long that we have to prove this data. Well, as a parent, if you think, or or if you have an intuition, or you think, you can definitely request that testing. in writing to the appropriate, principals and diagnosticians and everybody, and they have to honor that request for special education testing.
Okay.
If you decided you wanted to go out, let's say, and get a private test done,
Mm-hmm.
if you had a private diagnostician and that diagnostician found that your child had a particular learning difference, would that be honored, or does the school have to do their own testing?
The school would do their own testing, just because every school district and everybody has their own way of doing things. They would definitely take that into consideration. They
Okay.
don't. I've had a situation where we've not been able to take 100%. This was because they were from a different country and they brought it in. But most of the time, any IEP that's already written, an individualized education plan, that's what an IEP stands for, that comes from a different
Yes.
state, has to be honored.
Mm-hmm.
We don't ever start
Okay.
over. You have a waiting period of a certain amount of days, and then an emergency individualized education plan, like an IEP meeting, is set, and we look at all of the information, so they can go cross state lines 100%.
Okay. Okay.
So that's how that is. But any kind of data that you can provide is always great. And if you think that your child's not getting an accurate or an adequate diagnosis, it's definitely something that you bring to the table for sure.
We love data.
Okay.
Data.
We love data.
Love data. Mm-hmm.
The D word.
The D word.
D word.
So obviously the school, you said, is going to do their own testing, and districts have things different. All of that's grand, but can I, as a parent, rely on the school to do what's best? I think often we say, oh, they're the educators, they're the professionals, so surely they're doing absolutely everything for my child that they possibly need, so I'm just going to go with the flow there. But can I rely on that always?
I think that it's awesome to rely on people to do their job. And we trust our kids all the time with educators every single day. But I don't think that as a parent you can advocate and you can't know enough about your child. And I think that the more involved you are and the more understandings that you have about the process, about what everything means, the better outcome your child's going to have. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can trust school districts to do what the law is allowing, and you can trust that they're going to do everything. However, I think as a parent, understanding what tests are being done and then doing your own homework and making sure that you are aware of every single part of what's happening, ask all the questions, do your own research, advocate for your kids as much as possible. I don't think that you could do that. I think that what I was going to say is I don't think that you can do that enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more involvement that you have as a parent, the better off your child's going to be.
Do you have any examples of like what the school offered your children and what you pushed back and got more of because you had done the homework and you knew that maybe the school is offering up the bare minimum, right? They're saying, oh, this will be easy to implement because this is what we have in place, or support systems and teachers that we have in place. And you said, no, we can actually level up and I can fight a little bit more. And you have to give me that. You have to give me more, even though it's not easy.
For sure. I think for one of my kiddos, Spencer, he has a terrible dyslexia. Reading is really, really hard for him. And he was able to, starting at a young age from first grade, he started the Take Flight program, which is an amazing program that's, done through Scottish Rite. And he's had amazing, he made amazing progress. And he got through all of his books, and he was in the end of third grade, kind of first to fourth grade, and they were ready to say, hey, listen, he's done with this program and he's ready to graduate. And I said, awesome. Can I see the data? And they showed me the data and I saw the great growth that he had. However, he was still very much below grade level on his reading. And I was not okay with that. I said, I love that he has made a lot of great growth, but he is not ready to graduate from any type of dyslexia program. He needs more. And I had to advocate to get him more, a different type of dyslexia program. And, you know, it was a back and forth and a back and forth. And ultimately, probably one of the best decisions that was ever made for him, because the growth that he made from the time he started that second program until he's actually going to graduate from that program. He's been in it for probably 2.5 years, is phenomenal. And so do I think that he made growth at the end of that program? 100%. He did he made amazing growth. I wasn't happy with leaving him and stopping there because he was still below grade level. And so I had to advocate for more. I'm grateful for this, but I need a little bit more. And, you know, we had to go back and forth. And at the end of the day, we, you know, as a committee, we made a decision to continue on with a different program, and the growth that he made was even more than it was. So I think that for us, that was the best choice for us, even though the, you know, professionals said, hey, listen, we're done. We're good. We're done. We've said, you know, we're here, but I wasn't happy with stopping there. I knew that we had more growth to be made. So
yeah, that's great.
You mentioned Scottish Rite. Is that administered, their programs are administered through the public education system?
So Scottish Rite, Take Flight, and I would have to look it up real quickly to make sure I'm speaking correctly. Take Flight is a program that that trains teachers through Scottish Rite. And so I could go and get, if you had a child that, let's say, was not in the general education or in the public education system, and you could go to Scottish Rite and get your child tested for dyslexia through Scottish Rite, and they would, and they have this Take Flight program. Our school district just chooses that Take Flight program. A lot of public school systems choose that Take Flight program as their main dyslexia intervention program.
Okay. Got it.
What other possible roadblocks would you say you had to watch out for as a parent advocating for your children?
In advocating for my kids, just like everything that I was saying, I think making sure that I was staying up to date and understanding every single accommodation that was being offered to either one of my kiddos that received these services, making sure that they were being effectively implemented every day in the general education setting, understanding what those looked like, and making sure that, and what I mean by that is, you know, we have in education, we give students accommodations so that we can level the playing field. So if we notice that Spencer can't, has a hard time, struggles with reading, we will provide an accommodation like oral administration where he gets things read aloud to him, and that's supposed to level the playing field so that he can be at a level playing field with his peers that are his age.
Right.
And so I'm a general education teacher has to offer that and has to give that to him in all of his assignments and assessments. And I have to make sure that as a teacher, or excuse me, as a parent, always asking, did you get your oral administration on this test? Did you get a copy of your notes? Did you get a copy of, I'm not checking up on the school. I'm making sure that the accommodations as written in his IEP are being delivered to him so that I can make sure that I keep my own data, because I don't want to over accommodate Spencer, but I also want to make sure that if he's still struggling, then that's obviously not working. So I have to keep my own data. I think it's great that the school does it, but I like to know for myself. And then if I find that well, Spencer wasn't given his oral administration and then he fails a test, then I'm knocking on a door going, I'm really sorry, but Spencer wasn't given oral administration and he failed a test. No, thank you.
Yeah,
Let's try
this
this
test
again.
wasn't for reading. This was a science test. So
Correct.
let's actually test the subject matter
Correct.
on the table. So,
And so I think that my biggest roadblocks would be that my children are receiving their accommodations as they're written in their IEP.
yeah.
And just a constant checkup and making sure that that's being done. And it's a lot of kids. My children have 8 different teachers every day, and I understand that teachers are human. I live in that world all the time, but it's also my kid, and I have to advocate for him. At the end of the day, I'm his only advocate in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in the day, whenever I was considering how to educate Alec, my severely autistic, non-verbal son, I was told that I would have to hire an attorney to get him the services that he would need to be able to get through life. Would you speak to that? And nowadays, do you have to get an advocate? Do you have to get an attorney?
I think that an advocate and an attorney can be helpful if you feel like your child is not receiving the things or receiving the services as written in an IEP. I also think an advocate can be helpful if you don't understand what the services are and how they can help your student. And so
Okay.
if you're unsure if they have this diagnosis, and this, Spencer doesn't just have dyslexia. He has other, diagnoses that go along with that. Understanding what accommodations can help, level that playing field. But if you feel like you are not getting a good representation through your special education, then an advocate could be a way that they would go in and make sure that every accommodation that your child could get is being offered to them.
Okay. All right.
Would it be noteworthy to say, like I had this struggle with Jackson, he was given accommodations and the teachers would offer it and he refused them.
Oh, I have something to say about that.
Because at some point, the kids, like, it's like, we told him he could use his headphones and he didn't want to use the headphones because they were so uncomfortable and they gave him a headache. But he couldn't bring in his own headphones, so he just didn't. And in his case, it wasn't something that I cared to fight because it didn't change the outcome and he didn't have to have that. But kids don't want to look different. They don't want to be called out.
100%.
That is important.
When they have to be pulled into a small group and be read a test, or if they have to put on the headphones, or if they have to step outside or, have somebody else come in and give them these supports, they look different in the classroom. Correct. And kids kind of fight that. So have you had that experience where you've had to say, mother knows best or teacher knows best, and this is what we're doing to give you that support?
100%. So I think that as my children have gotten older, that I am very open and honest with my personal children about what their accommodations are, because they have to advocate for themselves at some point.
Yeah.
And there are going to be educators that don't provide their accommodations. And they are going to have to say, I'm supposed to get ...
Right.
At some point. I write in their IEP very specifically, I take out at student request. That's not an option for my kids, because a lot of times when they get older, they will say oral administration upon student request or small group upon student request. And that's off the table for my children, because I know as a parent that they do best with those. And if you give them the option, they don't want to look different. But if you make my kid ask for it, he's going to say no because he doesn't want to look different. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I definitely am very strategic when I have those accommodations written in an IEP that I take out the wording at student request. I refuse that.
Yeah.
And I had to do it at the last IEP. I'm like, nope, take that out. He is a 12-year-old boy and he knows he needs it, but he doesn't want to look different. You need to provide this to him and he's just going to go do it. We talk about every year before his IEP meeting, we look at it together and we say, is this working for you? What do you think about this? And I always talk about Spencer because Max just goes along and does whatever I tell him to do. But
bless Max's heart.
Max's heart. But Spencer will say, Mama, I don't think I need this. And I'll say, well, explain to me why you don't think that you need this. And he'll say, well, I don't need this because of this, or I don't need to. And I'm very aware of that with him because the goal is to wean off the accommodations so that he can be as independent as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, but am very, very, very passionate about my children not having to ask for an accommodation. I don't want them to ask. They need to be offered. It needs to be given to them as an everyday thing. And
this is what we do. Yeah.
This is what we do. And in my kids, I say to them, I'm so sorry that you don't like wearing your headphones, but that's not an option at this point. Maybe down the road, you will have that option of not wearing your headphones. But right now, for you to be successful and to get a good grade, you need to put your headphones on. And it's a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And that's just what we do.
Yeah.
At what point, if at all, do children go into what's called the ARD meeting? And I don't know what the ARD meeting stands for. I'm sorry. I don't know what that acronym stands for. Maybe you could tell us that. But at what point, if any, do the children attend that?
So the ARD meeting is the admission, review, and dismissal.
So whenever we go into an ARD meeting, it's when we review their individual education plan. And we either dismiss them from services or review the current plan and make sure that the current plan is working in the situation. And yes, they do. Max, it's in 7th grade, they start getting invited to their IEP meetings. Actually, I think it's 6th grade.
6th grade, yeah. I was going to say it's 6th grade for us.
Spencer did not go to his last IEP meeting because I uninvited him, but
there's a story there.
There is a little bit of a story, but that's okay. I do think it's important that they come to their meetings and they listen to us talk about them, and we talk about their disabilities. And I've had a conversation with my children because we talk about hard things in IEP meetings. As a parent, it's hard to go to. I don't think I've been to an IEP meeting or an ARD meeting where I didn't leave and cry, because it's hard to hear how your kids struggle in every aspect of education. It's hard to hear. And I think that anybody can attest to that. It's hard to hear that they're not good at this and they can't do this and they're, not able to do this, and you leave and you are very passionate about making sure that they get what they need. But at the end of the day, it's still sucky to sit and listen to.
Yeah.
And so Max has been to quite a few of them, and they're very good about saying, what do you think about this, Max? Does that sound like a good idea? Do you think that you need this? They're very good about learning to advocate for themselves or what they feel like they need. Both of my children that had 504s had all through high school, they attended their 504 meetings as well. So they were great.
I don't know what a 504 is.
That's okay. A 504 is a different type of plan. It's not an IEP, which is the individualized education plan. My other 2 children, one had ADHD, and so he just needed a few accommodations that are very general. Anna had type 1 diabetes, and so hers was more of a health plan. But those are pretty
interesting.
They're very generalized accommodations that they received. They're not individualized, which is what's different between a 504 and an IEP. An IEP, you individualize your education plan. So not every single one does not look the same.
Okay. But what is the whole reason why it's called 504? Is there a
I couldn't tell you. I'm not a 504
it,
expert.
okay, okay. But you are an expert on being a teacher. So if you flip the side now
Yeah.
to talk about to talk more about how do you help children who have IEPs? How do you become an advocate for your students rather than talking about your own children now?
It's much different, I think, because I see students in a different setting than I do my own personal children. Obviously, I see them in an education setting, and so I see the struggles in a different way. I advocate for students. I get a front row seat to when they're working hard on a math problem or when we're trying to read and we are having a hard time with comprehension or fluency, and I see those firsthand, and so I'm able to pave that process, like I was saying that Spencer's teachers did with him, where they set goals and then kept data. And then, the process is quite lengthy to where you get to the point, after 12 weeks of keeping data and trying different accommodations and trying different things, to saying, hey, listen, I have tried X, Y, and Z. I've tried to close that gap as much as I can in the general education setting. We're not able to transfer the knowledge that I'm teaching in a small group setting to the general education setting. And I think that there might be some other things that are playing a factor. And I can go into, we do it once a month, and we advocate for these kids saying, I think these kids need more than what I can offer them in the general education classroom. And of course, we have conversations with parents along the way. The first time that they hear about their child's, suspected, struggles should not be the time that I'm suggesting special
Right.
education testing. It needed to
Right.
start
Early.
9 weeks earlier, that said, hey, listen, I'm noticing that there's a few things that are not lining up. I'm going to set a goal on this and I'll keep you updated. And then 4 weeks later, hey, we're still working on that goal, but I'm noticing that this isn't happening. So I'm going to try something else. And we keep the communication going along the way to where at the end of that, if we, obviously the goal is to remediate as much as we can in the classroom. And if we can, then great. But if we can't, then we take them to the point where we would like to suggest further academic testing. And obviously that's a parent choice.
Have you had any parents say, oh, no, we're good. It's fine?
I definitely have. I definitely have had parents say no, thank you. And it's sad. It's sad for the kiddos because, the struggles and you see the struggles, and you get to a certain point where you can provide certain accommodations at a level. And if they're a parent refusal, then, you can't
Your hands
provide
are
that
tied.
level of support. Yeah, your hands are tied, and you know that there's going to be roadblocks along the way. And I've had parents say no, and several years later come back and apologize and say, I'm really sorry I didn't listen to you. They struggled for 2 more years,
Yeah.
and now we got them tested, and we should have listened in the first place. And so
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
bummer.
one of those things. But it's hard. It's hard to hear that your kid has a disability. It really
Yeah.
is.
It's very hard to hear. What percentage would you say of the children in your classroom have IEPs? And is it super hard to keep track of all of them?
Every year I have a different amount of IEPs in my classroom. It can be tricky because I have the understanding of what an IEP is and how important it is to my children. I put a very special emphasis on making sure that my students' accommodations are delivered and given to them as they're written in their IEP, because I advocate so hard for my own personal children. And so it can be tricky, but it's an expectation. And so in my classroom, it's not if it's convenient for Mrs. Owen to provide that for me. It's not. That's not how we do things at all.
But that's what makes you an exceptional teacher.
Oh, you're so sweet.
You're exceptional.
Oh, you're sweet. You guys are awesome to say that. I just am very passionate about it, and I think that for the kiddos in my classroom, parents appreciate that, because that's what I would appreciate as a parent. So, yes, it can be tricky, It can be, but it becomes commonplace when you do it on every single assignment in every single way. It's your job, and it's my job to make sure that that's delivered like it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay, we've talked a lot about this communication piece between parents and teachers, and it needs to be constant and ongoing. How do you suggest parents approach teachers in regards to special ed or requests, or if they're seeing something, like what do you as a teacher appreciate that communication look like?
Open communication in the form of, I know that my kiddo has an IEP. I appreciate it when a parent understands what that IEP looks like in my classroom, and they ask as many questions as possible.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of accommodations that we put into place for kids, and parents have no idea what they need. And so I think, we try in that annual meeting that we have with parents, we get to have an IEP, that individual education plan meeting, once a calendar year, and we go over all of those accommodations. But I think it's really important in those meetings to tell and show parents what that looks like in my classroom. So if a kiddo has, I don't know, 120s chart for math, what does that look like in my classroom? And then how do we implement that? And so that looks different in every different classroom, but I think just the use of that, I like to document the use of my accommodations in everything that we do. I write down on all homework assignments that go home what accommodations were used, so that the parents can see that I use that accommodation. Anytime we take a grade, I put it in the grade system, every accommodation that I use, so that parents can see what I've used, and it can be used as data. It's my data. It's data. If they know that they got a 55 on that, and I use the 120s chart and I continuously use it, then that 120 chart is not working.
Yeah.
What now?
What's 120 start?
It's a chart that we use.
Sorry, I don't know all this stuff.
It's okay. When students have a hard time with math computation, adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing, there's a chart. It's literally from 1 to 120. And we teach them how to add using it. And so when we have noted a basic math computation disability, which that's a disability that students can have, and we say, well, here, I know that sometimes it's hard to do 9 plus 5 in your head.
Without
so I'm going to
the
give
visual.
You without the visual. It's like a visual, it's a supplemental aid. Then we teach them how to use it. And it's a very successful tool that we use.
So it's like a modern day abacus.
There you go, Christy. I love that.
There we go.
It's a modern day
girls.
But if I can provide that accommodation to them, and it can take that, basic math issue away, then great. Those accommodations. And then they can use them again on the dreaded STAR test, right? Those are accommodations that they can use on the STAR test. So if I use that every single day in my math and they're using it effectively, then we can see that it's working.
Yeah.
And if I tell parents those things, then that's great.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here, both as a parent advocating for your children, as well as a teacher advocating for students and supporting parents in the classroom setting. But if you could boil it down to your 3 tips for parents to get the best for their children in a public school setting, what would those 3 bullets be?
I think in everything, general education, special education, getting involved in your child's education from the get-go is your most important part of being a parent who is in the know.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what your child is doing every day in school, understanding what their homework looks like, making sure you read all your teacher emails.
I was going to say, does that mean I have to actually read all 45 emails?
I know, it's so hard.
All 45. You have
all
to read them all.
Okay.
All 45.
Okay.
I just think that understanding what those are so that you can stay updated as to everything that's going on. Ask questions. Teachers want you to be in the know. They don't want you to be surprised. They want to, most teachers should over communicate. They want you, their goal is to have you have a successful child.
Yeah.
And so getting involved, staying in the know, ask questions. Ask questions. I get questions all the time. I don't understand how to do this math problem. Can you explain it to me? I can't tell you how many times, even though it's third grade math, it's different math than when I was a kid. And absolutely, let me show you how that looks. And I help parents so that they can help their student. That also makes me understand that, hey, this parent is advocating for their student as much as I would advocate for my own kid. And so just staying in the know and being updated and knowing what your kids are learning always. My second bullet point is if your student or your child is struggling, there are always services available that can help them, whether it's some sort of intervention within the school, the classroom setting. Your school has a set intervention system that will help your student close the gaps of their general education. Always. There's always different intervention and levels of different intervention that your classroom teacher can help provide in the general education setting. Always. Stay up to date. Always ask your teacher. Doesn't look like we're doing this. Are you seeing the same things that I'm seeing? You don't have to be an educator to know if you can tell if your kid is struggling in reading or in math. It doesn't take an educator to know. You will be able to tell if your kid is struggling in reading or in math. Know what's available to your kiddo and be their advocate. If you keep having that nagging feeling of, this doesn't seem right, and the teacher's saying, no, we're okay, let that go for about 3 or 4 weeks. And if it's still there, say, I'm not happy with this. Can we come in and talk? A face-to-face is always better than a phone call or an email, and have those conversations. If you're not happy with what the teacher has to say, then go to the principal.
Yeah.
You can always go higher, because at the end of the day, like I've said, you are your child's best advocate and you know your kid better than anybody. And I think I've said it a million times. My last one is communicate, communicate, communicate. I don't think that you can over communicate enough. I think even if you have a child in special education, they have to provide the data to you every progress reporting period. Even though it's a requirement, read it, look at it. You have to be the expert on those things.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't make sense to you, or you're not staying updated and they think that you're not checking in on them, then things will get a little too relaxed. And
yeah, that whole idea of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
100%. And I think that the squeaky wheel is the only one that's going to advocate for your kid as much as you can advocate for your kid.
Yeah.
Do you mainly communicate using email? Do you provide your phone number to anyone, or do you mainly do email?
I have a direct line at school that my parents can reach me at.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so they can, I don't ever provide my cell phone number.
Smart. Boundaries.
They definitely can email me whenever, and I'm always happy to have a phone conversation. Phone is better than anything. Phone in person is even better. So,
Do you love it when parents offer to volunteer? Does that make you feel like the parent is more committed in any kind of way, or does that not necessarily make any difference?
I'm not necessarily, volunteering to me is not as big of a deal as the emails of, hey, I noticed Janie got a 56 on her math test. I'm a little bit concerned. Should I be concerned? Or I know that, Janie has got 3 zeros in the grade book. What's going on there? Those are way more important than volunteering, in my opinion, because that's much more specific.
Okay. I was just curious about that. We really appreciate you joining us today, Megan. You are just a wealth of knowledge. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. And I really, really, really appreciate you coming and taking the time to do this, because we know you're a busy mother and a busy educator. And now you're going to be going to get a master's degree. You're going to get so smart.
So exciting.
Anyway,
Thanks for
thank you
joining
for
us,
being here.
Megan.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that is a wrap for today's episode of Piece by Piece. We love that you're here and hope that you will help us spread the word and share the show. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Piece by Piece Autism Podcast. That's PIECE, Piece by Piece Autism Podcast. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.